But we want to end the week's teaching with the beginning, as God being the creator, but more specifically, the creation of man. Let's turn in our Bibles to Genesis chapter 1. This one I did edit, by the way, Lisa. You'll notice a lot of it is censored. Yeah. Did that for just for you guys. Now don't pay so much attention. Wait, what did he censor? Genesis 1. Should have said that in the beginning. Genesis 1, let's look at 26 and 27, because like I said, we want to focus today on the creation of man and see what we can learn from that, okay? So on the sixth day, after creating everything else, verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creepy thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created them. Male and female, He created them. Image, which I think is very, very key for us as Christians to understand, but also those that are not Christian, for us to be able to share with them this whole idea of the fact that man, or mankind, as the word is, was created in God's own image. Okay? Image is basically the Hebrew word that means a copy. It's pronounced as selim, but it means a copy. And it's the same word that was used oftentimes to refer to idols. Okay? Same word that was used to refer to idols. And not that we're an idol of God, but just as an idol was a very similar, precise copy of the deity that people used to worship, so are we a copy of God. And and it says in His likeness, the resemblance. I don't believe so much for this to be a physical resemblance, because at this point, either when God said these words or when Moses wrote these down, God did not yet take a human form. Right? That happened with Jesus towards the end of this era, but towards the beginning of this era. But at this point, God was spirit. And it's for that reason that I think when God said, let us make man in our image, primarily it was a reference to the spiritual qualities that man was going to hold within himself or herself. Okay? So that means, in a sense, we inherit some of the spiritual qualities that God has. Not all, but some of His spiritual qualities. We were never eternal, we always had a beginning, but we will henceforth be eternal. In that sense, we have acquired one of God's spiritual qualities. Okay? But more so, when he chose to make us in His image, I think one of the most magnificent things is that He chose to put His glory in us. And that means He chose to put in us value, worth, and His mindset. Sadly, in the fallen world that we live in, ever since sin entered, that's been distorted. That's been made imperfect. Okay, which is why I think it's very, very essential for humans, regardless of what faith they're from, for humans to be re-educated with the idea and the fact that they're made in the image of God. Because of sin, we've inherited certain sinful mindsets, like I said. Even as kids, you'll notice that children aren't all that innocent. And I want to show a video to prove that.
These allegations are false.
Not this.
As adults, we lie
and expect to be lied to. But when does it...
That didn't present, did it? Let's try that again.
I have to say you're a liar, because...
But when does it start? Are kids born truth tellers, or are we born liars? Let's find out. We're setting up an experiment with the help of ex-CIA investigator Barry McManus. We're putting 4 kids between the ages of 4 and 7 smack in front of this very tempting chocolate cake and promising them a reward if they don't eat or touch the cake.
And I will be back.
Now we're going to leave them alone with the cake for 15 long minutes.
Don't eat the cake.
Or at least they think they're alone. Our cameras were secretly rolling, and we know that not all of them were able to resist the cake. Now we're sending Barry back in to question the children.
In my world, I deal with criminals, I deal with hardened criminals, I deal with double agents, I deal with terrorists.
And can he extract any confessions from this tough group? Barry will ask each of the kids if they touched the cake. Remember, we know they aren't all innocent. Play along and try to figure out which kids are lying. Ready?
You did not touch, right? You did not smell. You did not think about taking a piece of cake, right?
He's saying he didn't have any cake. But is he lying?
There's a piece missing, because I counted all the pieces before I left.
What? You think he's telling the truth?
Did you taste any of the cake? Not all? Not even a taste? Not even a touch? Okay.
Do you believe her?
Did you eat a piece of the cake?
I don't really eat.
He says he doesn't like chocolate. What do you think? All 4 kids told us they didn't eat or touch the cake. But our cameras saw everything. Which kids do you think are lying? Got your answer? Now, let's check the tape. He says he didn't touch the cake. Looks like he's eating something. Here was another denial. We have evidence to the contrary. What about this little angel? Uh-oh. Looks like she's tempted. But she didn't take the bait. He said he doesn't really eat chocolate. Tidying up the crime scene? It turns out that 3 of the 4 kids were lying. Does that surprise you?
Simple point is that this is not something that only we adults face with. Okay? Imagine that exact thing that we just watched, add 30 years to that kid's life without God. And you have corruption, deceit, dictatorship, trying to get what you want, even though you can't have it. Right? So it looks innocent and cute there, but when you look at the same thing in an adult's life, it's far worse and far gruesome. And this is something that wasn't God's plan for the mindsets that we were supposed to have, yet it is what it is now. Which is why we need to ask Him back for that perspective, for that mindset, for His perspective of life, and for His mindset, which goes back to what Jeremy taught us about having a biblical worldview. Right? A lot of our faith, the things that we believe in, Christianity does not come from sermons and songs, it comes from the Bible. Which is why the education of people that don't have access to this is so key. In knowing that we are created in God's image is when godly mindsets are reestablished. And it's when people know that who they really are, who they were made to be, and who they have fallen to be, and who they can be. Alright? And that's what builds the foundation for a new identity in God. That is salvation. Salvation isn't just escaping hell. No, it begins here on earth. It begins with a constant transformation of people's mindsets and attitudes here on earth. And the eventual reward may be eternity not maybe, I used that word wrongly. The eventual reward is eternity with God, but that's not really the focus right now. Right now, the focus is a transformation here on earth and making people aware and educating them of that transformation here on earth. And eventually, we have eternity with God. It's like I said, in this fallen world, we're born with sin. We inherit these sinful mindsets. We inherit these sinful thoughts and behavior. Which is why when we give people the gospel, we shouldn't just start from Jesus or from the fact that Jesus came to save our sins. It might be good to actually start from the image of God that we were created in. Right? And showing them that. Now I know it might not be easy to give them the whole Old Testament and all of Israel's history when you're meeting someone on the road for just 3 minutes. But maybe we can start with the fact that we were created in God's image. Because the gospel didn't start only when Jesus came to the earth. Remember, God's redemptive plan began right when man sinned. And you notice on the cross, Jesus said, "It is finished." That's where it ended. That's where the plan came to a fulfillment, offering hope for fallen humanity. And when we tell people this, they get an idea that what once was lost can be found, and they have that hope. Okay? And if they understand this, well, if we understand it first, and then if we educate people with it, we can start washing away the filth that exists in society, such as discrimination against other human beings. Right? That's what's called bigotry. Bigotry is intolerance towards those who hold different opinions from oneself. So if I hold a different opinion, I have a sense of intolerance or a sense of an offensive attitude towards this person. That can look like many things. It can be discrimination against people you consider of the lower race. Racism, which is super prevalent all over the world, even now, sadly, although it's very hidden. This can be discrimination towards someone that we think is of the lower gender, which in patriarchal societies, women are considered the lower gender. And in matriarchal societies, like what Ephesus was in Paul's time, men are considered the lower gender. This lower and upper is existent with race, with gender, and even, and this one is the closest to me, because it's closest to my land, the caste system, where you discriminate towards somebody of a lower human value, that you think is of a lower human value. Again, where does that come from? It comes from not understanding that mankind was created in the image of God. And all of this has been learned. People weren't born with it. We were born into sin, because of which we have this godless mindset that we sort of learn and develop, causes us to lean towards and learn all these ungodly things. But we weren't born with it. We did learn it. And that's why anything that has been learned can be unlearned. That's where the gospel of God's redemptive plan re-educates people about who they were made to be. Because without knowing, you're just going to do whatever you think. The Hindus during the Vedic period, VDIC, that's it, VEDIC, during the Vedic period, which is around 1500 BC, the Hindus that started the caste system that still exists in the minds of people today, although legally it's abolished, the Hindus that started it back then, they didn't know any better. Okay, what I mean by that is they didn't know that there was a better standard than what they already had. They thought that God created certain human beings and people were born in certain levels. Okay, there was the lower people that God made, there was the medium, there was the higher people that God made, and then finally the highest. That's what they thought. And hence, in the way they treated people, they were actually doing justice to God. Because the way that He created them is the way that they were going to be treated. But imagine if one of the Israelites, yes?
Are you playing different slides, or Is it on the same slide?
It's on the same.
Oh, no. I saw you click and I didn't see anything moving.
Yeah, same slide.
Okay.
So imagine during the Vedic period, if one of the Israelites took a copy of Genesis to the people in India. Genesis was written around the same time period. Imagine if somebody took Genesis to the people of India. We would have seen a lot more equality today, because that would have educated them. It didn't happen back then, but it can happen today. Right? That's where YWAM believes in eradicating Bible poverty, in the fact that every person can have access either to a physical Bible or to a digital Bible. Because it's the Bible's, sorry?
Even an audio Bible.
Even an audio Bible, yes. That's huge in the Bible publishing, the Bible multiplication process. And if we don't have this education, they don't know any better, and they're going to do things that they do right now.
Wouldn't that have been awesome if somebody really did that?
Yeah. Would. Because that is what Genesis did to the Israelites. Imagine the Israelites, okay? Sons of Israel, all sons and daughters, all of the people of Israel, right? Joseph was in Egypt, had a great time, he was Pharaoh, lots of God's favor, and then as they multiplied over the next century, they became a majority. And so the people in Egypt felt like a minority and started to oppress them. And as God had prophesied, they were going to spend 400 years in slavery. Imagine 400 years in a foreign culture. That's about 9 to 10 generations. Right? To give a better perspective of that, imagine today, imagine America today. Okay? And let's assume or imagine that every Christian today was wiped off from America. Okay? No Christians existed. One generation would pass by, people would kind of talk about it. Oh, remember when they used to go to church and they used to sing some songs, they used to do something like that. And then a second generation comes around. Before you know it, nobody even knows anything about Jesus. Nobody knows anything about Christianity, apart from whatever you find in history books. So imagine the Israelites without history books, living for 10 generations in the land of Egypt, not even knowing anything about their God. And even if they knew anything about their God, where was he? Where was this God that promised so much to our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Where is he now? Is he inferior to the thousands of other gods of Egypt? Is that why the Egyptians are successful over us? Because the gods of Egypt are stronger than the God of our fathers, Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham? Where is this God? 400 years of not knowing anything about who they were as a people, who they were called to be. God calls Moses to write an account about how he is the one that created, and how he created them, and how they were created in the image of God. Imagine what that would do to the minds of the Israelites. Because in Egyptian culture, Pharaoh is supposed to be the incarnation, the picture of God. He is as though God were here on earth. Okay? He wasn't God. They didn't believe him to be God, but they believed him to be like God, in the image of God. So when the Israelites were now coming out of Egypt, listen to Moses saying and writing, and they're hearing these things that way. When God started to create mankind, we were created in his image. Not only Pharaoh, all of us. That would have totally re-educated their entire mindset, changed it around to understanding who they were. Which is why Genesis was successful in re-educating a spiritually uneducated people about God. Re-educating a spiritually uneducated people about God. That was the spiritual aspect of the way God created man. But there's also a physical aspect. Okay? And this is a hard one, and even in our society today. Let's move on to verse 31 in Genesis 1.
Can you say it again? Spiritually re-educated?
Genesis re-educated a spiritually uneducated people group about God and about themselves. Genesis re-educated a spiritually uneducated people group about God and about themselves. Imagine what it could do to India and other countries. Verse 31. And this is on the 6th day. After everything God had created. Verse 31. And God saw everything that He had made. Okay, the last thing He made was mankind. God saw everything that He had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. How many of us have looked into the mirror today? 1, your finger up, 2, 3, 4. Okay, basically everyone. The next question you don't need to answer loud, just answer within yourself. How many of us liked what we saw in the mirror today? You don't need to answer that out loud. And usually we don't. Okay? As mentioned earlier, one of the things that our society struggles with is the lack of this self-value. And this can be male, female, young people, old people, where we wanna be different from what we are. Where we're really not pleased with what we see in the mirror, and we kind of resent that to an extent. Yeah, because we don't understand that we're created in the image of God, and then He said that it was very good. For some reason, knowingly, unknowingly, we compare ourselves to what the world or the media calls beautiful. And this can look like many things. In India, the standard of beautiful is that you need to be fair. Right? And if you're dark skinned or have a dark complexion, you're considered not so good looking. This exists even in South Korea, that has the highest rate of plastic surgeries because of the standard that's been set for what a girl should look like. And roughly 1 out of 5 people actually change their features. 1 out of 5 people. That would mean about 3 of us here in this classroom changed our features.
Aren't they really considered a Christian nation now?
Yeah.
Mm.
So the world categorizes people as good or beautiful, but what does God say when He saw everything that He made? He said it was very good. It's literally like if there was a film production and everything that was released by this film production was a hit. Nothing was a failure. Everything God created, specifically in terms of mankind, was a hit. It was good. Right? But it's hard to understand that sometimes because of what the world tells us. Because the world is often defining good features as sparkling eyes and a well-shaped bone face and a built body and just different features that seem to be what is good. And I think in saying that one human being looks good and then there's another category of people that don't look good, it's in essence saying that God made a mistake with the other people. So then you have to ask yourself, is it possible that God made a mistake with some people and not with others? Because if we believe no, that God cannot make mistakes, then how is it that we categorize certain people according to the looks that they have and label them as good looking and bad looking? It's because of culture. And it's not just specific cultures. Every culture, I think, from the West to the East, every culture teaches us to use certain words, even in our language. How often have we said, she's hot, or he's cute, or, oh, he's good looking? And if you think about it, it sounds like, oh, Dan, that's a little drastic. You can't pick on that. That's narrowing it down too much. And it may sound crazy, but how much more crazy is it when we actually look at somebody and say that they're not good looking. How much more crazy is that? I think if we change our vocabulary in the way we address people, I think that will really bring down the rate of self-rejection, self-hatred, and the way people look at themselves because of what other people say. We believe these lies that have been spoken over us, that we're physically not good looking. And then we start to speak that over ourselves. And before you know it, we start believing that I am ugly. I am bad looking. Rather than truly seeing that when God saw us, He said that everything is good. And I want to tell you something out of love, but it's straightforward. It doesn't matter what you or me think about our own appearances. What matters is that the Lord of all the earth, the Creator God, when He looks at us, He, the beautiful artist, when He looks at us, He says it was very good. Right? So the creation of man has two aspects to it. The spiritual aspect, where we inherit His values, where we inherit His qualities, but then also believing that physically we are sufficient and we don't need to change ourselves for culture.